As the morning mist lingers just above the dew-soaked grass, and the crows begin their patient chatter in the high trees, the day begins, for a young boy named Edmund. He is a squire, not yet a knight, but more than a page, and he lives within the high stone walls of a keep nestled in the green valleys of western England. The year is 1371, and Edmund is 15 years old. His world is small in the grand scheme of things, and yet to him it is vast, filled with duties, expectations, dreams, and quiet friendships. Let us walk alongside him, through just one day in his life. The sound that wakes Edmund is not an alarm clock, but the ringing of the chapel bell. It tolls softly, not for a funeral, nor for celebration, but to mark the beginning of another day. It echoes through the narrow halls of the keep and into the squire's chamber, where Edmund and 3 other boys sleep on straw mattresses laid close together for warmth. He stirs slowly. The air is cool, and his blanket, a rough woolen thing, passed down from the army master, offers little comfort from the morning chill. He yawns and rubs his eyes. His first thoughts are always the same. Did I polish Sir Cedric's armor well enough last night? And will he notice the scratch on the greaves? He dresses quickly. A brown tunic, belt, and simple leggings. His boots are muddy from yesterday's errands. No time to clean them now. He fastens his belt, checks his dagger, dull, ceremonial, but worn proudly, and slips out of the chamber. In the keep's small kitchen, steam rises from a pot of porridge. A cook, Margaret, spoons it into wooden bowls. She's kind but curt, and Edmund has known her since he was sent here at age 7. He offers a polite bow, more out of habit than necessity, and she nods in return. At the long table, he eats beside the other squires. There is William, who is a year older and already taller than some of the men-at-arms. Quiet, strong, and fiercely loyal. Then there is Peter, clever, always smiling, always scheming. And lastly, Thomas, younger than Edmund, nervous, and still getting used to life away from his family. They do not speak much over breakfast. It is understood that the day ahead will be long. Each has his own knight to serve, and Edmund serves Sir Cedric, the most traditional, and some say, the most demanding, of them all. After breakfast, Edmund rushes to the armory. Sir Cedric's armor must be checked, every buckle, strap, and plate. He lays out the pieces on a long wooden bench, the cuirass, the gauntlets, the greaves. Each must shine. Each must fit. There is a rhythm to it, polishing, buckling, adjusting, and in the quiet clinking of metal, Edmund finds something close to peace. Sir Cedric enters shortly after. Tall, broad, and grey-bearded, he is not unkind, but neither is he sentimental. He inspects the armor with a slow, steady gaze. He finds no fault today. A small victory. "You'll help me mount after chapel," he says, "and ride behind me to the training field." "Yes, my lord," Edmund replies with a bow. The interaction is brief, as always. There are no kind words, but no criticism either. And so Edmund allows himself to breathe. The chapel is cool and dim, filled with the scent of incense. The squires attend service with their knights. Latin prayers float softly into the rafters. Edmund kneels. He prays for courage, for strength, and, quietly, for home. After the service, he helps Sir Cedric don his armor and mount his horse. Then, Edmund climbs onto his own, a smaller steed, gentle and brown. They ride slowly, side by side, through the castle gate and out onto the training field beyond the orchard. There, drills begin. Sir Cedric practices with the other knights, sparring with blunt swords, charging at dummies with lances. The squires assist, carrying gear, watching form, and absorbing the habits of war. But it is not all violence. Between bouts, Edmund helps water the horses. He listens to Sir Cedric critique another knight's form. He shares a flask of watered ale with William and jokes quietly about how Peter fell from his horse the day before. The sun climbs slowly overhead. The work is physical, yes, but familiar, repetitive, comforting, in its way. They return to the keep before the sun reaches its peak. In the hall, they eat again, bread, cheese, cold meat, and ale. The knights dine at one end of the long table, the squires at another. Edmund glances towards Sir Cedric but receives no look in return. It doesn't matter. his long used to the formality. Peter tries to start a game of riddles, and Thomas smiles for the first time today. William, as always, listens more than he speaks. The hall is filled with the sounds of clinking cups and murmured stories. Outside, a hawk cries in the blue sky. In the afternoon, the squires attend to their education. A visiting monk named Brother Arlen teaches them reading, writing, and history. Today's lesson is about Charlemagne, his rise, his empire, his sword said to be blessed by God. Brother Arlen's voice is soft and slow, and Edmund nearly drifts to sleep. Not from boredom, but from calm. The room is warm, the stories are old, and his eyelids are heavy. After the lesson, he copies a passage onto parchment, his handwriting still uneven, but improving. Later still, comes weapon practice. Under the watchful eye of a former knight named Sir Gareth, the squires train with wooden swords. Not to harm, but to learn balance, patience, and timing. Edmund is not the strongest, but he is nimble and observant. He bests Thomas in a gentle match and then narrowly loses to William. Peter wins his round, of course, quick-footed and showy. They sweat. They laugh. They bruise. And when the lesson is done, they thank Sir Gareth and Beau. As the sun begins to dip low, Edmund sees to the horses once more. He brushes their coats and checks their hooves. One of the stable boys, young Anne, helps him silently. They do not speak much, but she always leaves him the better brush. A quiet kindness. Later, he delivers a message to the steward and carries water to the cook. He helps mend a strap on one of the knight's saddles and finally, returns to the squire's quarters. As darkness settles over the keep, Edmund writes in a small book. It was a gift from his father, a carpenter in a town many miles away. The book is worn, its pages stained by dirt and sweat. But inside are his thoughts. His hopes. He writes, Sir Cedric spoke more today than yesterday. William still bests me in swordplay. I think I saw a falcon nest near the orchard. I wonder what home looks like in summer. The other squires lie nearby, drifting to sleep. The room smells of straw and wax and wood smoke. He closes the book. The candle flickers low. There are challenges, of course. Sir Cedric is strict. The work is constant. There are boys who envy Edmund's place, and a few who whisper behind backs. Rival squires from visiting knights. Even a steward who seems to delight in making life harder. But Edmund does not dwell on them. He has learned that time softens most troubles. He has allies, William's quiet strength, Peter's constant jokes, Thomas's eagerness. Even Anne, with her silent kindness. He misses his family. His mother's stories. His father's hands, rough from woodwork. But he believes this path, hard as it is, will lead him somewhere honorable. Not yet a knight, but learning, always learning. And so ends another day, in the life of a medieval squire. Not one marked by glory or legend, but by duty, patience, and quiet moments of grace. The candle is out. The keep is still. And Edmund dreams of swords, and stars, and home. The baker's morning in a quiet village. The village is still wrapped in the hush of early morning. Its cottages, with their timber frames and moss-covered thatch, are silent but for the low murmur of wind weaving between the trees. Dew coats the fields. Smoke has not yet begun to curl from chimney tops. The world is paused, in the last quiet stretch before dawn. But not all are asleep. In the heart of this quiet village, behind a worn wooden door and beneath a low-beamed ceiling, the baker is already awake. His name is Thomas. And this is his morning. Thomas rises long before the sun. He does not need a rooster to wake him. His body, after years of habit, simply knows. He swings his legs from the bed slowly, gently, so as not to wake his wife, Agnes, still curled beneath the woolen blanket. The room smells faintly of ashen flour and dried lavender. Familiar. Home. He stretches, feels the stiffness in his back, the same ache is carried since his 30s, and dresses in a plain wool tunic, sleeves rolled to the elbow. His hands, already marked with white dust from the day before, reach for his apron. He ties it snugly, takes a breath, and steps quietly from the room. Outside, the The stars still hang in the sky like pinpricks of silver. But within the bakery, the oven still holds the faint memory of yesterday's fire. And Thomas will soon give it life again. The hearth is the soul of the bakery. A great stone beast, built into the wall, with a blackened mouth wide enough to roast a boar, but instead, it hungers for bread. Thomas kneels beside it. Carefully, he lays kindling, dry wood chips, straw, a twist of linen soaked in animal fat. Then larger logs. The spark is struck with flint and steel, a practiced flick, and a dull orange glow is born. As the fire begins to grow, the shadows in the room dance. The shelves, the flour sacks, the dough troughs, all sway gently in the firelight, like the beginning of a dream. He does not speak. He does not sing. But in his mind, he hums. A quiet tune. His mother's lullaby, from long ago. Once the fire is set, he begins the work of the day, the bread. He scoops flour from a great sack, one he traded for a pair of pies just 2 days before. Water from the village well, carried in heavy pails the evening prior, is added to the wooden trough. Salt, a precious pinch. Yeast, kept warm near the fire, is gently stirred in. His hands, thick-fingered and dusted white, mix the dough slowly. Fold, press, turn. Fold, press, turn. It is labor, but it is rhythm. His fingers know what to feel for. His palms read the dough like a page of scripture. Too wet? He adds flour. Too dry? A splash of water. Fold, press, turn. This is where he finds peace, where thoughts fade, where his mind wanders not to worries, but to memories, his son, when he was small. The morning his daughter first plaited her hair. The moment Agnes first smiled at him across the market square. The dough rests. He covers it with linen, warmed by the rising fire. Thomas steps into the small front room, the shop. It's simple, a counter made by his brother-in-law, 3 shelves for loaves, and a small wooden bell above the door. He opens the shutters. The early light has begun to touch the village roofs. A dog barks. Somewhere, a cartwheel squeaks. He sweeps the floor with slow, deliberate strokes. Dust is cleared, then flour is scattered again, this time clean, controlled, welcoming. A silent message, here, there will be bread. On the wall, a carved plaque reads, "Feed thy neighbor as thyself." A gift from the local priest, years ago. As the shop begins to warm, so does the home above. Agnes descends the stairs quietly, wrapped in a shawl, cheeks still kissed by sleep. She brings with her the smell of rosemary soap and old quilts. She greets Thomas with a gentle touch to his shoulder and a small cup of cider. They do not always speak in the morning. They've been married for 22 years, and some silences are more tender than words. Their son, Hal, left 2 years ago to apprentice with a stonemason in the next shire. Their daughter, Joan, is 15 and still at home. She helps sometimes in the bakery, especially when Thomas's hands ache too much to knead. But this morning, she sleeps. It is her day to rest. Agnes begins preparing small tarts. Today's filling, stewed apple and cinnamon bark, saved from last winter's trade. Not all is easy in Thomas's life. There are mornings when the yeast fails, when the fire smokes instead of burns, when the flour is poor, or the weather is cruel. There is a tax collector who walks with a cane and a permanent sneer, always claiming the oven is too large, the loaves too many, the tax is too low. And there is Bernard, the miller's cousin, who insists Thomas once underpaid him for barley bread, and reminds him loudly, whenever he passes the shop. But Thomas, ever steady, lets these storms pass. He nods politely. He does not argue. He simply returns to his dough. By the time the sun spills golden light over the eastern hills, the first villagers begin to stir. And soon, the shop's door creaks open. The wooden bell rings. It is old widow Ellsworth, leaning on her walking stick. She comes every morning, takes a single roll, pays with a coin and a story. "Did I tell you about the goose who stole my bonnet?" she asks today. Thomas smiles and listens. Later, the blacksmith's apprentice arrives, hands still sooty, looking for 3 brown loaves. Then the schoolteacher, who always asks for a tart and a bit of yesterday's bread for the birds. Children come too, sometimes with coins, sometimes with eggs or herbs, and once, quite memorably, with a carved whistle in exchange for 2 biscuits. Thomas accepts each with grace. Not all customers are easy. Some complain. Some push. Some try to barter unfairly. But most are kind. And familiar. And in their faces, he finds something rare: trust. As the oven reaches its peak heat, Thomas places the shaped loaves inside with a long-handled paddle. The scent that follows, warm, yeasty, slightly sweet, fills the shop, drifts through the cracks in the door, and slips out into the village street. It is a smell that comforts. That gathers people. By now, the shop is busier. Agnes greets the customers. Joan appears, bleary-eyed but smiling, and begins wrapping loaves in cloth. The room hums softly with greetings, coins, the creak of floorboards. Thomas, behind the scenes, tends to the fire, flips flatbreads, and rolls dough for the afternoon batch. He rarely stops to speak. But from time to time, he looks up and sees his wife laughing with a customer, his daughter gently lifting a child to see the loaves, the sunlight catching the flour in the air like soft snowfall. And in that moment, he feels something close to happiness. There were years, long ago, when the harvest failed. When flour was rationed, and Thomas had to choose between feeding his own family or supplying the villagers. There were times when he burned the loaves, spoiled the yeast, or lost his father's old recipe scroll to a rainstorm. There was a winter when he broke his wrist slipping on ice, and Agnes had to do the baking alone. He still recalls the fear, not of pain, but of losing the thing that kept his family fed. Yet each hardship passed, as all seasons do. And in surviving them, Thomas grew not just in skill, but in patience. Thomas does not seek riches, nor fame. He has never left the village, save once, to visit his cousin in the next county. He measures his life not in coin, but in crusts and crumb, in kindness given and received. He finds joy in the perfect rise of a rye loaf, the crackle of crust cooling on the rack, the smile of a child biting into warm bread, the whispered thank you from a tired mother, the way Agnes hums when folding napkins. These are small things, but to Thomas, they are everything. By mid-morning, the rush slows. The loaves are mostly gone. A few buns remain, tucked in a wicker basket. The fire, though still glowing, begins to relax. Thomas washes his hands. The cold water stings, but it is clean. He stretches his fingers, sore, cracked, strong. He steps outside the shop for a breath. The village is fully awake now. Smoke rises from chimneys. Carts roll past. A boy chases a dog near the well. Life, in all its quiet beauty, unfolds. And Thomas stands among it, not separate from it, but essential to it. Back inside, Agnes wraps 2 leftover loaves. One for the priest, one for the healer's hut. Joan begins sweeping. She hums, the same tune Thomas had hummed earlier. He smiles, but says nothing. He sits for a moment, on the stool near the hearth. The fire is nearly out. Only embers remain. And in the warmth, in the scent of baked bread and apple tart, Thomas lets his eyes close. Not in sleep, there is still work to do, but in a moment of peace. A breath. A thank you. And so, the morning ends. Tomorrow, it will begin again, in darkness, in flour, in fire. Thomas will rise, shape, bake, and serve. He will face small hardships. He will greet familiar faces. He will be tired. But he will also be proud. Because Thomas is a baker. And in his simple, steady work, he nourishes more than the body. He nourishes the soul of the village. Sleep now, dear listener. Let the scent of warm bread drift into your dreams. Let the hearth fire glow behind your closed eyes. And if you find yourself walking, someday, through a quiet village, listen for the soft ring of a wooden bell. And follow it, to where the baker begins his day. How were candles made in medieval times? Long before the hum of electricity. Before glowing bulbs lit our evenings and buzzing screens chased away the night. There was only flame. Firelight, soft, flickering, warm. And among the most cherished bearers of that light, was the candle. In the medieval world, a candle was not just a convenience. It was a craft, a ritual, a humble miracle shaped by hand and flame. Tonight, let us wander through time, step into the quiet world of the candlemaker, and discover how candles were made in medieval times. Chapter 1: A world before light. In a medieval village, darkness came early. When the sun dipped behind the hills, and the sky deepened into shades of indigo and black, the world grew still. Only the brave, or the necessary, moved through the night. To live in that world was to live by fire. Hearths, torches, oil lamps, and yes, candles. But candles were not everywhere. They were a precious thing, more common in churches and wealthy homes than in the cottages of villagers. Still, they were made, patiently, carefully, by those who practiced the gentle art of light. Chapter 2: Two kinds of candles. Not all candles were equal. In medieval times, there were two main kinds, tallow and beeswax. Each had its purpose. Each its scent, its glow, its place in the world. Tallow candles. The commoners liked tallow was rendered animal fat, usually from cows or sheep. The same fat used for cooking or soap was, with care, turned into candles. They were the light of inns, kitchens, and the humble home. But they had their cost. Tallow candles smoked. They dripped. They gave off a strong, greasy smell, not unlike roasting meat. In winter, when nights were long, homes would fill with that scent. To some, it was familiar. To others, unpleasant. Yet tallow candles were affordable. They could be made from the remains of a slaughtered animal, fat that would otherwise be discarded. For many, they were a gift of necessity. Beeswax candles. The noble flame beeswax candles were a different thing entirely. Smooth, clean, sweet-smelling. They burned with a steady, golden light, almost no smoke, and far less mess. They were the candles of churches, noble halls, and monasteries. In cathedrals, beeswax flames danced before icons and saints. Monks read scripture by their light. Nobles dined under their soft golden glow. But beeswax was rare and precious. To make a single pound of wax, thousands of bees would toil all spring and summer. The wax was gathered in careful, reverent harvests, scraped from hives, melted, strained, and treasured. These candles were not merely tools. They were offerings. Chapter 3: The tools of the trade. To make candles, the medieval artisan needed only a few simple tools, worn by time, passed through generations. A cauldron, usually of iron, to melt the fat or wax. A tripod or trestle, where wicks could hang and cool. A ladle, for pouring. And molds, usually made of metal, clay, or horn, for shaping uniform candles. Some candlemakers worked from home. Others traveled from village to village, like peddlers. And in towns, small candle shops stood quietly between the blacksmith and the brewer, their air thick with warmth and scent. Chapter 4: Preparing the wick. At the heart of every candle is the wick. In medieval times, wicks were made from twisted flax, cotton, or hemp, whatever fiber was strong and absorbent. A good wick meant a good burn, not too fast, not too dim. The candlemaker would twist the fibers into fine cords, often soaking them in a bit of salt or vinegar to help them burn slowly and evenly. Then, the wicks were cut to length, tied to wooden rods, and prepared for dipping or molding. Chapter 5: The tallow candle. Step by step, let us walk now through the process of making a humble tallow candle. Step 1: Rendering the fat. The fat, often from butchered animals, was cut into chunks and placed in a large pot. It was slowly heated over a fire, never boiling, just enough to melt. As it melted, the fat separated. Pure, clear tallow rose to the top. Impurities, hair, bone, sinew, sank to the bottom or were skimmed away. The liquid tallow was then strained through cloth, often linen, and set aside to cool slightly. This process was slow. It took hours, and it filled the air with a strong, meaty smell. Step 2: Dipping the candles. Once the tallow was ready, the dipping began. The wick, tied at both ends to a rod, was dipped into the warm fat. Then lifted. Then cooled. Again and again, dip, lift, cool. Dip, lift, cool. Each layer added thickness. Patience was key. It could take 20 or 30 dips to form a proper candle. The candles were hung to dry on wooden racks, like upside-down ladders strung with delicate white teardrops. If done in winter, the cold air helped set the candles faster. In summer, the process was slower, and flies were a constant nuisance. Step 3. Trimming and storing. Once dry, the candles were trimmed, the wicks cut, the bottoms flattened. Then they were stored in cool, dry places. Tallow could spoil, especially in heat. So candles were kept away from fire, sun, or vermin. Sometimes, herbs were added, rosemary or lavender, to mask the smell. And then, they were ready. Light, wrapped in fat and fiber. Chapter 6. The Beeswax Candle, a work of grace. The making of beeswax candles was slower, more refined. Step 1. Harvesting the wax. The wax came from honeycombs, collected after the honey was drained. The combs were broken into pieces and placed in boiling water. As they melted, impurities sank, and pure wax floated. It cooled in thick golden discs, like coins from some ancient treasure hoard. The wax was then melted again, strained through linen, and stored. Its smell was sweet, natural, almost holy. Step 2. Pouring or dipping. For expensive candles, molds were used. A metal tube, often pewter or tin, was set upright. A wick was threaded through its center, and hot beeswax was poured inside. Once cool, the candle was removed, smooth, even, perfect. For simpler beeswax candles, dipping was also used, just like tallow. But the result was finer, cleaner, a thing of beauty. Step 3. Blessing and burning. In monasteries and churches, beeswax candles were sometimes blessed before use. They were used in rituals, on feast days, during vigils. Some believed their clean flame chased away evil spirits. Others saw them as symbols of purity, the body, the wick, the soul, the flame. To hold one, to light one, was to touch something sacred. Chapter 7. Life by candlelight. In the medieval world, a candle meant more than light. It meant time, a few more hours to sew, to read, to pray. It meant safety, in the stable, in the cottage, in the watchtower. It meant celebration, placed in windows for feast days, or lit during births, weddings, and wakes. Children learned to read by candlelight. Stories were told beside the flickering flame. Lovers whispered in its warm glow. Priests preached. Midwives worked. Kings made decrees. And when someone passed, a candle was lit. Its small, flickering flame reminded the living that light is fragile and precious. Chapter 8. The chandler's place. The maker of candles was called a chandler. Some villages had their own, others bought candles at market. In larger towns, candle guilds formed, protecting the secrets and standards of the craft. The chandler worked year-round, but especially in late summer and autumn, preparing for the long winter nights. His shop smelled of smoke, wax, and herbs. Strings of wicks hung from beams. Molds lined the walls. Children watched in awe, noses pressed to the glass. He was not a wealthy man, but his work was trusted, needed, respected. He brought light to darkness. Chapter 9. The flicker fades. As the centuries passed, new ways of lighting homes emerged. Oil lamps grew safer. Glass lanterns spread. Eventually, with great leaps of science and flame, came gaslight, and then electricity. The candle, once essential, became symbolic, decorative, ceremonial. But the craft, the ancient act of making a candle by hand, still survives. In quiet corners of the world, artisans still melt wax, twist wicks, and dip, and dip, and dip again. The same way it was done 1,000 years ago. So now, as you lie still, listening in the dark, perhaps, in your mind's eye, you can see them, a row of simple candles, gently flickering on a wooden shelf. The warm glow dancing against a stone wall. A quiet room. A sleeping child. And beside the fire, a candle, burning low, watching over the night. Sleep now, gentle soul. Let your mind drift through the hush of candlelit halls. Down quiet village streets. Through cathedrals and kitchens. And into dreams lit softly, by flame.